Street of the Dead. Teotihuacan was built with precise planning, as it was necessary for the dimensions and complexities involved. Every building had a practical use for its inhabitants, and space in the city was very organized. As seen in other ancient Mesoamerican cities, aspects in the alignment of some construction even reflect the cosmos. The main city street we walk along now is called Calle de los Muertos, or Street of the Dead. This is because they believed that the numerous mounds on the sides of the avenue were graves. These ruins are not graves, but in fact buildings for different civil and administrative purposes. Street of the Dead had measured up to 5 kilometers in its prime, but today what we see is about 2 kilometers, ending at the large Pyramid of the Moon. Along its path, there are at least 80 ruinous bases and pyramidal structures of various types and sizes for political, religious, and administrative purposes. The major civic buildings on this avenue also show evidence of having been ravaged by fire, assumed to be the result of an internal uprising against the ruling class. Overall, however, almost nothing is known about the domestic life of the Teotihuacan population that built these huge structures along the Street of the Dead. Researchers find that the later constructions reveal obvious social class differences ranging from modest abodes to rich buildings like the more recently excavated Azala Palace complex. This palatial structure is north of the Pyramid of the Sun where the Street of the Dead no longer extends, and it's believed to be the royal palace of Teotihuacan, home to its ruling class. To the west of the Street of the Dead and very close to the San Juan River are the superimposed buildings, known for their preserved murals. These overlapping buildings reveal the common architectural practice in pre-Hispanic villages of constructing a new building on an existing one with only partial demolishing. In total, there are at least 8 distinctive construction stages in this area. Accessed from a structure that linked to the Street of the Dead, we see 3 pyramidal bases upon entering this area before finding ourselves in a large square. This floor surface at the same level as the Street of the Dead dates back to earlier times of Teotihuacan. The more aged buildings here also include one with a drinking water well 10 meters deep. The rest of the complex consists of rooms, hallways, corridors, and other spaces assumed to be for political and residential purposes. Some of these structures connect with Plaza Oeste, or West Plaza. Out of all the excavated buildings, the main interest revolves around a small temple with preserved decorations. The murals feature interwoven scroll motifs and jade ornaments. We can also see motifs resembling storm god nose pendants, a rectangular crossbar on which 3 circles are embedded, a split tongue hanging down. This symbol is associated with personal reserve or withdrawal, as it is a type of veil men wore over the lower half of their faces. The walls built during the later Teotihuacan period reveal what is likely motifs of cosmograms, which exhibit an interest in one's place within the universe. Pyramid of the Sun. We are now in the heart of the ancient city. When the Aztecs arrived in Teotihuacan, it was some 500 years after the collapse and subsequent emptying of the city. So they would have arrived with just as much curiosity as we have. They even arrived in the same direction that we may have arrived from, since their empire, a triple alliance of city-states, originated and expanded from the southwest where Mexico City stands today. Some major differences between our experience and that of the Aztecs would be the lack of smartphones, no informative smart guide, and a ton of religious superstition. Standing in this plaza, the Aztecs believed that this was the origin of all the world cycles and the birthplace of the gods. Just as the sun rises and sets in a day, the Aztecs believed that the world had already undergone 4 sun cycles by the time they were around in the 13th and 14th centuries. They believed that these cycles lasted between 7 to 13 52-year cycles, which adds up to 364 years and 676 years respectively, and that they were in the 5th one. This means that, from their point of view, the city of Teotihuacan prospered in a previous cycle, perhaps the 3rd or 4th one. Given that Teotihuacan is located to the northeast relative to the historic center of the Aztec Empire, it isn't too hard to imagine why they believed the world's sun cycles began where we are standing today. We are in the northern hemisphere and some distance towards the equator. This means that the sun primarily rose from the northwest with some variation depending on the seasons. However, while the Aztecs later named the pyramid in front of us after the sun, it doesn't mean that the Teotihuacanos did as well. Its original name is a mystery and its function is unknown, but some theories have manifested. A man leads 6 meters down into the earth and connects to a cave. But it is no ordinary cave. It was first believed to be what is known as a lava tube. As we walk north along the Street of the Dead, pay attention to the ruins on our right. We will eventually be approaching a structure with a small metal canopy just in front. You might witness some people gravitating towards it as well. This is because it shelters one of the most unique works of art, which has survived for at least 1,500 years. This is the Puma mural. Spread out across a platform board and to the right of a set of stairs, the mural depicts the feline animal endemic to Central America. Look closely. It appears to be walking across a series of wavy and undulating bands that are intersecting with each other. It seems to move its body in a horizontal direction. The head isn't visible, possibly due to a smearing of the paint across the plaster over time. The back and the belly are outlined by a long, slightly undulating line. The narrow tail curves smoothly downwards. The paws are short and each one has 4 claws instead of 5. The image of the puma is superimposed on a background composed of red and white bands which run adjacent but do not crisscross. They separate the main background color, which consists of different shades of blue. The whole scene is framed by a large pattern composed of thick green rings on a dark red background. They have a name which is hard to pronounce, quetzalpapalotl. The origin and hidden meaning behind the picture remain a mystery. The picture could carry religious connotations. One of the deities of the Teotihuacan religion was the anthropomorphic deity of the netted jaguar. We are also fairly close to a variety of different temples, as well as on the Street of the Dead, so this building would certainly have been the property of the elite class. Many spiritual celebrations and events would have taken place on their doorstep. However, this isn't a jaguar, nor is it in a net, so the connection is at best rather loose. Another theory could indicate that it was to establish social status. Evidence has emerged regarding the capture of carnivores such as pumas, wolves, jaguars, and eagles. Some may have even had humans fed to them. Going back to religion, a lot of excavation points towards the captivity of humans and carnivorous animals for ritualistic purposes. Perhaps the mural is a relief portraying these kinds of rituals with the patterns symbolizing the religious repetition of these rituals. Temple of Agriculture. What we see now in front of us may look like just another set of messy ruins. In fact, the Temple of Agriculture isn't much of a temple at all. Well, not compared to what we've seen before anyway. Instead, it is a complex of several overlapping structures that correspond to different periods of construction of the city. Which periods they belong to, however, remains uncertain. We know for a fact that the earliest buildings at Teotihuacan date back to 100 BCE. But these tended to be raised beds, called chinampas, standing over swampy land, which lent to effective agricultural output as well as a convenient channel for transport by canoe. From that century onwards, the city rose to prominence and to dominance for the next 600 years until its peak in 450 CE, collapsing in the following century. For reference, the Western Romans rose and fell during the same time period, too. The Temple of Agriculture is a notable landmark along the Street of the Dead due to the murals that were discovered within. It is therefore protected just like the Puma mural. It was also one of the very first areas of the greater archaeological site where murals were found. They provided us with the first visual portals to Teotihuacan's past, peeling back the layers of mystery covering the site. While these murals were under threat of continuous deterioration due to exposure, some images have been discerned. The most dominant representations found in these fragmented murals were flowers and fruits endemic to the local environment, hence the name of the structure. Other compositions featured horizontal bands superimposed, separated from each other by other narrower bands of a reddish-orange color. At regular intervals, archaeologists saw that they were pointed at an upward angle. Perhaps this was to simulate ceaseless water waves. Palace of Quetzalpapalotl. When we refer to the Palace of Quetzalpapalotl, we are only referring to a portion of a larger architectural complex in which the palace can be found. This luxurious palace is found just next to the Plaza of the Moon Pyramid and actually faces it, quite the scenic spot. Additionally, with the amount of effort that has gone into the decorative reliefs, it is clear that a high-ranking priest and noble once resided here. They would have had a perfect view of Teotihuacan city center since the temple entrance descends into the plaza, and specifically onto the Street of the Dead. The site's present splendor is thanks to the Mexican National Institute of Anthropology and History, who renovated it between 2009 and 2011. Before its rediscovery in 1962 by archaeologist Jorge Acosta, the Aztecs found it first and named it after the mythological birds they found on the pillars in the courtyards. In their language Nahuatl, quetzali means precious feather and papalotl means butterfly. Once we enter the pillared courtyard, we will soon see why. In the center of each column, a figure of a bird is featured, with a butterfly on its chest. The bird is likely either a quetzal or a native elf species. Its stellar eyes are made out of obsidian discs. On the inner walls of the courtyard are reliefs depicting life and fertility. Finally, the upper red band on top of the pillars is said to show different dates of the Teotihuacano year. The palace itself is one structure built over another, also known as a superimposed building, of which there are plenty in Teotihuacan. Archaeologists have dated the ruins back to around 250 and 300 AD. It was then built over between 450 to 500 AD, when Teotihuacan was at the height of its power. So we are looking at the second iteration of the palace, and not the first. This is a useful point of reference in helping us to understand just how long the Teotihuacano civilization was around. Even they needed to renovate after 100 years or so. Plaza de la Luna, or Plaza of the Moon, consists of 12 impressive temple structures in front of the Pyramid of the Moon. This is said to be one of the most harmonious spaces in Teotihuacan because of its careful planning and religious uses. In addition to the pyramid, these 13 structures are believed to be symbolically placed to reflect the Mesoamerican ritual calendar and its day counting system. The altar in the center of the plaza has also long been associated with religious dancing. Archaeologists refer to the building at the front of the pyramid as Structure A. It's framed by 2 bases and inside has 9 altars that represent cardinal directions and the center of the universe. However, what really fascinated experts was the tier shaped like a quinkings, the 5-dot pattern seen on dice, or cross. This Teotihuacan cross is also assumed to be associated with cosmological order, but with little understanding of its purpose. So this spiritual space served as part of a symbolic, ceremonial, and ritual program, and yet, during excavations, archaeologists likened the surface of Plaza of the Moon to holes in cheese. So how do rituals in Teotihuacan and these holes in the ground relate? Well, a total of 400 holes used over 500 years have been identified, and inside many of them were stones from rivers. Pyramid of the Moon. La Pirámide de la Luna, or Pyramid of the Moon, is Teotihuacan's second largest pyramid at an approximate height of 42 meters. While the Pyramid of the Sun is larger, this pyramid's prominent place at the northern end of the Street of the Dead, and on higher ground, makes it more symbolic. It's found to even be more gracefully proportioned. Completed around 300 CE, climbing to the top will give us some of the best views of the entire archaeological zone. Inside this structure, 4 burial offering complexes have been discovered with symbolic and valuable relics. Can you believe the oldest construction of the pyramid, called Building 1 by archaeologists, lines up perfectly with the axis of the Street of the Dead? Radiocarbon samples have indicated it was built around 100 CE. What's more fascinating about the Pyramid of the Moon, however, is the tunnel that goes 33 feet, 10 meters, deep. Similar to the tunnel under the citadel, archaeologists believe this tunnel also features a miniature landscape of Teotihuacan with imagery of the underworld representing their belief system. Moreover, human and animal remains were found buried here, which indicated the Pyramid of the Moon was used for human sacrifice. Out of the 12 human victims, 10 were found decapitated. They also had their hands tied behind their backs and 2 wore expensive jewelry, which indicates their high rank. Both discoveries are similar to the human sacrifices noted at the Temple of the Feathered Serpent. For some reason we may never know, the sacrifices here seem to be more violent.
A little bit different taxi ride back, huh?
Thank you.